Welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kinnahan. The Washington Commanders on Saturday lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 29-18 in a game where Washington showed some fight. They really did. But ultimately, it didn't end up well. It ended up the same way the last, 11 other games or 10 other games have ended up so far this season in a Washington loss. Now, there are some things to like about this performance, but at the same time, I feel like I'm talking about the same things every week, and we kind of know where this team is at. Last week, the win against the Giants, I don't think many people looked at it as a get-right game for Washington because, one, at this point in the season, there are no get-right games. You're kind of just the team that you are. And number two, this team is not good, and they beat a team that is very not good. So that too. But Washington came into this game against Philly. I wanted them to win, of course, even though, the draft pick would be great. I felt like delaying Philly's NFC East title for another week or at least for another day would have been cool as well. So I wanted Washington to win this game, and they had them. They had them in the first half, but then there was the second half that really took a turn. Now, it wasn't entirely their fault. Let's jump into the first read here. In this one, it wasn't entirely their fault because Mariota got hurt, or Mariota got hurt, so that didn't help at all because once he went down, it was pretty much wraps for the offense. But then, the defense started letting up pretty late, but it felt like Washington had a chance until Mariota went down, and once he went down, it was pretty much over. Now, Washington's game plan coming into this game was clearly make this game ugly, make it a low-scoring game. You got Mariota at quarterback. Maybe he can make some magic late, and Washington would be able to pick up a win in this one. But up 10 to 7 at halftime, and Washington ultimately, lets up 22 second-half points, and the Eagles win it by 11 in a game where I believe the Eagles scored 22 unanswered as well to open up the second half. So, again, it's not great. I mean, once Josh Johnson threw that interception, oh boy, that I knew we were cooked beforehand, but that was a meatball served on a plate. Like, that was horrific. But ultimately, Washington took the L in this one and a fall to 4-11 on the season. We'll dive into the offense and dive into the defense in a second. But yeah, ultimately now Washington's 4-11, 2 games left. We all kind of want this season to end, and I don't blame you. I really don't, because this season's been a season of nightmares, and it feels like it's just going on forever now. At this point, Washington with the 4-11 record. Let me search it up. I know I'm recording this before the Sunday slate, but they now have the 7th overall pick. I believe if Arizona and the Jets win today, Washington would have the 5th overall pick, which is pretty crazy. I think it would also require the Saints to win as well. They could have the 6th overall pick. If the Jets and Cardinals win and the Saints lose, they could have the 6th overall pick. So definitely a lot on the line. Even though they won last week, they still have a top pick in this draft, which is pretty crazy. All right, let's keep it moving now with the offense. Look, the offense early on, I felt like was really solid. Krosky Merritt had a couple of explosive runs, picking up 10-plus yards. Chris Rodriguez, I felt like had a really solid game. I know he kind of stat padded at the end there on that last drive, but I really feel like this running back duo is really solid. You get one more guy in there, one more young running back that can, have some explosive runs. I think Rodriguez is a great power back. He was falling forward. He was pushing the pile on a lot of his runs early on in the game. It wasn't picking up a ton of yards, but it was enough, like 4 yards, 5 yards, just to stay ahead of the chains, which is super important for a team that, is without their starting quarterback and without their starting left tackle. So the passing attack is not going to be as good as it usually is. It's important to have a strong run game, and I felt like they had that throughout this game. Now, once they were down, they got forced to pass the ball, and when Josh Johnson came in, it was pretty much wraps. But I felt like with Bill and with Chris Rodriguez, two running backs, that both scored as well. I thought the running game was doing really solid. in this one, and they kind of have been so far this season. I hope that both of these guys, I mean, Bill is pretty much a lock to make the roster next year, but I really hope Chris Rodriguez is back for next year because he is someone that I really think is an underrated running back and someone that, a 2023 sixth round pick, and he's basically leading the team in rushing yards each week, only in his third season. So great stuff from a late day 3 guy. Both of these guys are late day 3 guys, as Bill, of course, the 7th round pick this past year. So great stuff from both of them. And then in the passing game, they got Terry involved a little bit. Debo on some of these screens, I feel like could be a little bit more creative. I know there was one screen to Debo that was kind of a fake screen to the outside, and then you go a little tunnel to the inside, and that is great. That's what I want to see more of. If I'm Cliff Kingsbury, I want to see play calls like that, and it is definitely it's definitely been less creative, I feel like, or maybe we're just seeing a lot of the same stuff at this point. But it definitely is a step back from what we saw from Cliff last year. Now, last year was the first year seeing Cliff's offense here, so it was definitely a lot different than what Washington has had in the past. So maybe that also played a little bit of a role, but there was also more success in a way as well. So this year we're seeing a lot of what we saw last year, but it's not working as well. And that is also important to note as well. Treylon Burks, another player that is kind of shined in this stage of the season. That is, the season is lost. Washington, a lot of injuries on the team. There's not much going for them. Who are the young players that are going to shine, that are going to step up? I feel like Treylon Burks is one of them. Yeah, he's only getting 1 or 2 catches a game, but those catches that he is making are highlight plays, contested catches. He is someone that has played himself onto next year's roster, in my opinion, especially with how bad this wide receiver room is for Washington, and kind of the big question marks on who's going to be in this wide receiver room moving forward. As Debo, of course, is a free agent. I don't know if he's going to be, or I believe he's a free agent. So I don't know if he's going to be on this team moving forward. And then also, behind Terry, some of the younger guys, we don't know exactly what we've got. Luke McCaffrey, of course, season-ending injury, and then after him, Jalen Lane got injured as well. I know, and Lane has shown some flashes, especially on special teams, a couple of punt return touchdowns already for Jalen Lane, but on offense, it's definitely not entirely there yet. So Burks is someone that's been in this league, that's still young and has the athletic tools to make some highlight plays. I really think he should be on this team next year. And yeah, Debo is an upcoming free agent, so not exactly sure what's next for him and if he's going to be able to come back for another year for Washington. I am right now kind of indifferent on Debo. It really feels like he's kind of solely being used in the screen game, and that is it. I really feel like there's better options than Debo, and I don't know how much he wants to get paid next year. You look at his stats for this year, 68 catches, 639 yards, and 5 touchdowns for him. And I believe half of those receptions have just been on screen plays behind the line of scrimmage. I saw some crazy stat like that, which is absolutely crazy. So definitely still, some improvement that needs to be made in this wide receiver room in the offseason. And maybe, Washington goes out and drafts someone in the first round, like a guy like Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson, right? Or, you go in free agency, and the wide receiver class in free agency, I'm looking right now, I don't think is that great. Mike Evans, again, Christian Kirk, Debo, De'Ami Brown, Tutu Atwell, Hollywood Brown, Jawan Jennings. Jawan Jennings could be interesting for, I believe, is he a free agent? I thought he signed an extension. I guess not. So Jawan Jennings, I think, could be interesting just because of the San Francisco connection there. So I definitely could see Jawan Jennings in Washington paying for him this offseason. But man, it is definitely not that great overall at that wide receiver room. Going to the tight ends, Ben Sinnott had a catch. John Bates had a drop. I still need to see more from those guys. I really do. Now Bates, of course, receiving isn't his go-to. That's not what he what he's known for. He's known for his blocking, and he's done a great job of that so far this season. It is Sidnett that needs to do more in the passing game or in the receiving game, and we're not really seeing that. We're not. And I know he's open on more occasions than what we're seeing just from the box score, but ultimately he's not out there making plays. And for a former second-round pick, we need to start seeing him be out there making some plays towards the end of this year. This is a big opportunity for him. And last week, he had a big game, but right now we're not seeing enough from Ben Sinnott. And you look at the stats on the season, 6 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. That is not good. From a second-round pick, that is not good. Other things, the offensive line, I really felt like did a solid job. Now, again, a couple of sacks, but I'm not really counting once Josh Johnson got in there, because the game was over once Johnson got in there. But for Mariota, I felt like they did a solid job. He was under pressure at times, but I felt like there was more Mariota holding on to the ball and the receivers not getting open than the offensive line. Coleman definitely was probably the weakest link on that line. It was pretty obvious, but it is great knowing that Washington really does have their tackle duo of the future with Laremy Tunsil and Josh Connolly. So there's still, a bright future ahead at offensive line. I think that is definitely one of the stronger units for Washington right now. Mariota's performance overall, it's kind of just what we've seen so far this year. 7 of 14, 95 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Kind of was gifted at the beginning of the game, with the muffed kickoff. And ultimately Washington wasn't able to punch it in. Again, Washington went away from the ground game, I felt like, once they got inside the 5, inside the 10-yard line. It's been a common trend so far this season. Now later on, we saw Cliff go to 6 straight runs once he got inside the red zone. So there's definitely still, he kind of knows that the ground game is where it's at for Washington. But at the same time, we're seeing him get away from the ground game too much, I feel like, at times, which is not great at all. All right, let's now go to the defense. Look, the defense for the first half, I felt like was great. The coverage from Bobby Wagner wasn't spectacular, but I felt like the pass rush was getting the Hurts. They were getting pressured. The run stopping, the run defense was great. I felt like, Wagner was filling the holes well. Same with Luvu. And then, we saw guys like Kinlaw. We saw guys like, just the defensive ends getting involved. Jacob Martin. It was just the penalties. The penalties in the first half really kept Philly in a lot of their drives. Washington finished with 5 penalties for 44 yards, but it felt like almost every single one of those penalties were either on third down for Washington or fourth down, keeping drives alive for Philly. And also it's just the third down conversions. I believe Philly was 4 of 9, which is just too good. It's too good on third downs. Washington's defense on late downs was not pretty. Oh, I forgot to change the graphic. All right, was not pretty, but ultimately, it definitely was a struggle again. Philly scored 29 points at the end of the day, and they got put in a tough position after the Josh Johnson interception. But at the same time, Philly had over 300 yards, I believe, 385 total yards. That's way too good. They ran for over 200 yards on the ground. You can't be doing that. Saquon in the second half really turned it up against Washington. The first half, I felt like they did a great job of stopping him, but it was the second half that, man, really, really hurt them a ton. And Hurts with his legs as well was a major issue throughout. I felt like, some guys that stood out to me, Jordan McGee had a really solid game. I felt like his speed at linebacker is something that we really have lacked seeing from guys like Bobby Wagner and like Frankie Luvu. So there's definitely still, still, I feel like a question mark at linebacker. And McGee, there's still some weaknesses with him as well, but we're seeing signs of improvement from Jordan McGee. And in year 2, for a former fifth round pick, I believe, that's what you want to see. Well, that's what you want to see from a project 5th rounder. You want to see signs of improvement in year 2 and some flashes, and I really think we saw that today. Wagner had a couple tackles for loss. McGee had that big tackle for loss, and Igbenogany as well. A couple of sacks for Washington. Wagner had one. Jacob Martin had one. But it was definitely, kind of more of the same for Washington's defense throughout this game. The secondary really struggled against A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Sandersill, I think, can still be a piece for the future on this team. There are just some big ups and downs with him. In man coverage on the outside, he still struggles heavily, but we have seen some flashes from Sanders still, and he was attacked a lot in this game. I have to look back at his targets in this one, but he was attacked a lot, and he delivered on, I would say, more than half of those occasions. Now, of course, he led up the touchdown to Devontae Adams. He had some other big catches as well, but he also had a couple of pass breakups and was someone that, he's been a playmaker in Washington's secondary throughout the season, and Washington hasn't really had a playmaker in the secondary to create turnovers for a majority of the season as well. So that is also part of it as well. I'm going to look at real quick the interceptions for Washington's defense, because if I remember correctly, so Sandersill has 4. Washington has 7 total, 7 interceptions overall, and Sandersill has more than half of them. Wagner has a couple, and then Lattimore had the 1, but Sanders still has 4. And when you want someone that can create turnovers, Zero's the guy. Zero's the guy that does that, because no one else currently in the secondary we've seen be able to create turnovers, and that is also pretty big. And when you preach the ball is life, or the ball, you have to attack the ball. I don't remember exactly what Dan Quinn says, but when you preach that message, you've got to create turnovers, and Washington's defense has really lacked being able to do that so far this season. Again, 7 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries, so 9 total turnovers for Washington's defense this season, which is not good. Not good. We've played 15 games, and we've got 9 turnovers. Not good. So that as well. All right, let's move on to the final thoughts here in this one. Look, Washington lost again at home. First half, it looked really solid. It really did. The vibes were great inside. Yeah, I know there's a lot of Eagles fans there, but the vibes were great inside Northwest. But ultimately, disappointed again. Another letdown of a game for Washington. A game that I really felt like if Mariota didn't get hurt, Washington has a really, really good chance of winning that game. But ultimately, Johnson comes in, throws an interception, and it's wraps from there. It is bad. But yeah, Washington now plays the Cowboys on Christmas Day. That the next episode I think will be out on Friday. I think the next episode will be out on Friday, but that'll pretty much wrap things up here on this episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Because Washington plays on Thursday. Next episode on Friday. Man, it's going to be only a week and a half left, or only 2 more weeks left of this season for the Commanders, and then it's wrapped up. We go on to the draft, and that's that. But that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys next one. Peace.